Are men winning if they are not married?
No, no, marriage is a much better deal.
Okay, I'm
I
going.
disagree with that.
What is your?
Okay.
I disagree. What is your definition of winning? Winning. What is that? What race are we supposed to be in?
We're
Because winning. Because if winning is me being in my total peace, I'm winning with or without a woman. If winning
Okay.
is being financially secured, I'm winning with or without a woman. So
Mm-hmm.
what is the true definition of winning? So we have to stop with these homonyms of defining winning. First of all, define win. I agree with certain things. We have to recognize historically, and we don't have to go all the way back to the 1950s. I'll just go back to my generation, which is prior to my generation, even when women went to college, remember, most HBCUs were still mostly women, but they also had what was known as cultural home training. And I hate to use the word training because, women are animals, but just allow me to use that word loosely. They still knew how to take care of a home. The men had the ability to go out and work and make enough money to economically take care of a whole household at 18, 19, and 20. Today, that is not the economic reality. So we're living in two totally different realities. The other thing is that, this idealism, I let everybody know, neither one of my grandmothers was overweight, and they from South Carolina. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Big mama idea, overweight. I don't know about that stuff. I do know that my grandparents worked. My grandmother worked. My grandfather worked. They worked. They bought a house. They had a business. We was raised. Cool. And remind you, these are people that was originally from the South. My parents are the one that migrated up north and worked together to build the home that I came up in. What has happened when I got back out in the dating world was that you had an overwhelming history that has taken place. I think I echoed this a whole lot. 1995, Million Man March. What was we saying then? Hey, black men was going to jail. They was getting on drugs. They was doing all that crazy stuff. We came back. We leveled up. We got fixed up. And now I got more black male millionaires in today's world than I had in my world. I got more black men who got businesses today than in my generation.
You got more black men in jail today than
No,
any
sir.
other
No,
time.
sir.
You got
No,
more
sir.
black men
No,
on
sir.
drugs
No, sir.
today.
No,
than
sir.
any other
No,
time.
sir. You better go check those
I'm
numbers.
lying?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the reality is there are more African Americans who got college
I'm
degrees
lying. The
today.
Census Bureau's lying.
Right. You got more black men who are in college today than you have in prison. You also have more African American men who are in better economic situations today than in my generation. I came out of the crack era, so I know what I'm seeing and I know what I'm looking at. Okay.
So did I.
And the other thing is that my argument is when I quote unquote got back out in the dating market and started dealing, I didn't see the same type of women that when I used to be single. So you do have an entire change. Now, do I believe that certain areas of men need to level up? Absolutely. But then what do I do with the men that I can boldly show you who are characteristically leveled up, economically leveled up, socially leveled up, and still can't find a woman? Let's also understand, I'm not dealing with men who are YouTubers. I'm dealing with real men in the real world. So I'm not just dealing with cyber mentality. Okay. Then I'm dealing with men that's been pushed out in the 1990s out of your atypical black church and will not return to the black church. So you don't even have the so-called church men and church elders as you did when I was growing up. There has been a dynamic change and a total shift that is taking place. But see, if we're going to make it in this world, either we're going to fall for the game. And what is the game? The game says everything goes towards the women. So explain to me why if women is running it, women got the power, women got all of this, why is your average African-American male can't read above the 3rd grade reading level? Why is those that are in prison, 70%, single parent homes? We just had a political system. We can't even get not one bill across that benefits the African-American male or the African-American family. And then number 4, you just had 3 women who was running this whole political system. And what ended up happening?
Hold on. Now, are you Uncle Stu? I just have a question.
Yeah.
And
then Bishop will get you in as well,
I
Bishop.
want to answer this question because he never answered my question. So I wanted to respond to what he said, man, in a minute.
What's the question?
I said that marriage is a much better deal for men, and you said it's not. So you never answered.
No, I said, what is the definition of winning?
Winning.
Okay,
Winning.
the definition of, you want my definition? Because it's 9 of us here. We all have different definitions. 8 of us. We all have different definitions of winning.
Yeah, Brother Clarence, what is your definition of winning?
What is your definition of winning?
Mm-hmm.
My definition of winning is having a good, strong foundation for your children, raising your children in the best environment for them to cognitively develop and learn and be able to critically think in the world that's adverse against them. That to me is winning. Now, if a lot of guys, I'm not saying everybody should get married because some people ain't built for it. There's a lot of work, like Brother O was saying, it's a lot of work. But I'm saying it's the best situation. But the problem is, it's like the question I just posed. Is it marriage? Is it the institution itself of marriage? Or is it that we picking people based on a sexual attraction and trying to build the marriage around that instead of building the marriage around a bunch of different qualities that Brother O was talking about, and also Sister Mayat was talking about too, being ready and understanding that this is a growing process. You ain't getting no apple tree straight out the ground like the other brother was saying. You ain't getting an apple tree straight out the ground. This is a process. It's going to grow. It's going to shoot the root down, shoot the stem up, and it's going to take time to water, and it's going to take time for that tree to grow and get strong. But when I
got married, I'm always say I'm a happily successful man who raised 3 daughters and end up getting them into college, and my daughters are married. So if you're talking about if I'm a young man getting married, then there's a whole lot of education that needs to take place. I got that education. Most men don't have that education. If you're talking about suitable marriage, an institution in which is now being done in the court system that gives everybody an easy out, absolutely not. A court system that is no longer equal, no. A court system.
You would tell young men not to get married today.
Me?
Yes, you.
Let's get Bishop on too.
Sure.
Bishop George, what you have to say about this? I saw you shaking your head. You was like, was that the Uncle Stu?
You muted good Bishop Church Tabernacle. You real low, like maybe your audio isn't plugged in.
Yeah, the audio is low.
It's sounding better.
Yeah, you might have to pop out and pop back in because your audio is. We can't hear you. Nah.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie, Courtney. When I tried to get on, there's something wrong with the system. And when you dropped the link the second time, I was able to pop on. That's why I asked you, was there something wrong with the system?
Yeah, try to pop out and pop back in because we can't hear you at all.
Or do a you might need a refresh as well too, because I had a refresh. I was all kind of messed up for 5 minutes.
Well, I asked you, Courtney, you have more video RAM on your computer.
If you look at marriage holistically, it goes right back to what I said. If you grew up in the right home and your wife grew up in the right home, then you can make the right situations happen. What my argument is, how it was when I grew up, I'm sorry, I'm 54. I don't know what to tell a 23-year-old today because they're not facing the same type of women that I am. Now, I would challenge because High Value Nurse was on that platform. Canadian-born Nigerian was on that platform. is to, and I'm not trying to deviate everybody off of Courtney's. When this is over, go see the platform that happened just yesterday with married Black women who are married to Black men and hear their responses. So that way, everybody won't be sitting here saying, I'm citing some, because it seems like African-American men that has an independent voice, everybody say, oh, well, he with the Manosphere, or he with Kevin Samuels, or, and it's so dismissive. What I had to learn getting on these platforms is I had to really learn to listen. I had to really learn to listen. Yes.
Yeah, you can be heard. You can be heard.
And I had to really learn to listen. So for my generation, I say 100%, yes, get married. I'm over 50 years old. I don't have to worry about children. My children grown. If I have a 23-year-old, I don't know what to tell him when the same quality of woman is not the same quality I have.
Okay, Uncle Stu, let's let Bishop.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bishop. I'm so sorry.
Come in. Let him.
So sorry. I think. See, I've been in these YouTube spaces for a long time, right? For a long time, since like 08. And to me, you know, I've been married 17 years, and I've been in the streets. I've been locked up for all kinds of crimes that you can think of. I've been in prison. I got out. I got married. I raised 4 children, 2 daughters to adulthood. I have 5 grandchildren. To me, Black people, especially my generation and the ones that we gave birth to, we complain too much and we make too many excuses, way too many excuses. And we don't take responsibility for our failures as adults and the children that we gave birth to. These children that's 23 and are our children. So if our daughters are out of whack, that means that there was a lot of brothers wasn't there. A lot of mothers didn't make right decisions. And then the flip side of that is because I done heard all the arguments. I done debated all the arguments. You got a lot. You have a lot of individualism in the Black community. I got my credentials. I got this. I got that. But we don't turn around and take all of those resources that we are acquiring and put it right back into our communities to develop our people. All we care about is ourselves. We're selfish. Marriage is sacrifice and commitment. Nobody wants to do the sacrifice and the commitment. I hear these arguments every day and I cringe and I'm like, man, shut up. Because most of y'all don't want to put the work in to be married. And then we pass this thought process down to our children, and then we get right into a gender war and we start blaming each other. Remember, Black dysfunction is profitable for everybody else but Black people. It was Black families. It was Black families that got us all the rights that we got today. It was Black families that got that pushed us to get the education we got. And I live in one of the blackest cities in America, Philadelphia. When I go down here to these offices to buy real estates, all the families is in there but Black families. Mexican families, Arab families, white Russian families, they come in there as a family unit and they build. You know what we do? You know what we do as adults? We complain, but we don't use our history and the things that we've been to empower us. We use it to beat up on each other with it. And all the other groups sit back and watch us step right over and take everything in our market. But we come on here, we complain like we got a black belt and blaming each other. I'm talking about that's all we do. And for me, I just ended with this. For me, I grew up in the crack era. I'm on the other end of my 40s. I don't want to hear it. If a brother like me can be married, and I was a piece of work in the 90s. If a brother like me can be married to a black woman for 17 years and raise children, I'm not trying to hear none of that, because the statistics when I was in prison said I wasn't supposed to be none of that. And I made a choice. Most of us don't want to make that choice, and we complain. So I don't care if you the nigga on the block with the hot knock, the bad chick, or the dude in college that ain't got no babies. We are selfish towards each other, and that's why we're at the bottom of everything as a collective, not an individual. So
now let me ask you a question, Bishop. My question to you is, how many of these people know what you know? And the reason I say that's
a good question.
And the reason I say that is because it's not always an excuse. When you say, and I'm trying to make sure I understood you correctly, when you say the parents needs to do that, right? Okay, so the parents that were successful and done that, and then trying to come back to teach that, but getting a clap back from that, how can you blame me?
That's
so let me.
That's
the
easy.
reason I say that, how do you blame?
Let me answer.
If I'm not doing if people not doing individualism,
bro, I got you. Let me answer the question. I heard it well because I've heard all this before.
Sure,
it's an excuse, and I'm gonna tell you why.
Sure,
in cities like Philadelphia, Baltimore, these black cities, we have black people that are highly educated. We have enough education today to be regentrifying our own communities. You don't have to live there. I own properties in some of the gulliest places in Philadelphia. I don't live on that block, but I own the properties. We are supposed to be, we already should be creating our own millionaires with the infrastructure in these cities that we lived in. We do not redevelop our people, and we use that weak excuse. And, well, if I come back, they're going to beat up on me. Well, guess what? In black dysfunction, hold on, let me answer because I heard you. In black dysfunction, we're going to go through our trials and tribulations at a time, but because we operate through trauma, we don't know how to plan things 20 years in advance like other groups do. We have to learn how to come together and plan things and redevelop because we've been at war. Most of us go get education and leave based off of trauma. Some of us are the first ones to graduate from college. Some of us, we've developed, I can't wait to get the hell out of here mentality. We can't wait to get away from our people while other groups are running in and becoming the millionaires. So we don't think economically, we think job for other people. So all I'm saying is this: you don't have to live next to Pookie and Ray Ray, but you can own the property and start redeveloping your people. We have a mindset, like I told you, we don't like each other. And you know what we do? I end it with this, because I hear all these arguments. And I'm in these places buying the properties. And this the one thing that I understand is, and I had to learn this, we blame the Pookies and Ray Rays in the hood for everything that go wrong in the black community. But at the end of the day, it's the educated black woman and black men in the suits with the education and the power that won't redevelop back into their people. Some of those are the biggest culprits, because there's a nigga being born right now because our greatest class won't build back in like other groups do. That's the only way you're going to fix this problem. Like he said, that's the institution of setting up structure where children to grow up and understand what their roles is to each other. In dysfunction, everybody's profiting but us. It's just simple.
I almost threw my computer. I almost had to throw my computer. Let me tell you. Okay, I was about to swing it. Okay.
I had a question a long time ago, but I'm gonna let y'all rock. I gotta
say this. I gotta say that. I know that podcast last week I mentioned this. Black people don't have their own institution to build back themselves. We don't have our own hospital. We barely have more than enough banks. We don't have our own school. We barely have our own grocery. I'm in New York City, and the Jewish community have multiple of their own school, their own bank, their own hospital, their own grocery. We never tried to build together within our own community. I try to build my own computer business and fake people computer in my own community. The problem is, we don't support one another. It's funny how they'll go downtown Brooklyn and go to Best Buy that will charge you 2 arms and a leg to fix your computer. The one in your computer will fix it 1/3 or 1/5 of the price, but you're not going to support his business. What Bishop Jordan talking about is what I've been saying for the past 20 years. Like, when you would have stopped making this excuse, the 80s, 90s, you had the quartz color design thing was going on. It was coming, then disappeared. Then you got Nigerian fabric and fashion, which they started on African fashion. It came up. It went. When it comes to black business, we don't support it as much as you support the white business. You put out the Louis Vuitton. I could care less about Louis Vuitton. You put out the Tommy Hilfiger. It's not black owned. It's white owned. We take our dollars and line up behind Foot Locker to buy whatever that's owned by the white person and put our money in it. But never take our dollar and invest it in the black business. Everybody talk about, oh, let's bring back Black Wall Street. Yeah, you want to bring back Black Wall Street, but you don't support your own black business. So how is that possible?
Yeah.
Explain that to me. I'm a nerd. I will beat you with a fact and the truth. I don't play around with talking points.
Yeah. Canadian born.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and I think that's something that we do a lot of times. We're always looking back. And TJ, I want you to chime in on this as well too, because TJ made a point on one of her shows, where she was talking about April Mason, right? But April Mason said specifically that she doesn't want to go back in the 40s and 50s. She was talking about, abuse and how, TJ, correct me if I'm wrong, if it was legal to beat your woman then or whatever. So she was like, I don't want to go back then, of course. So I get that aspect of it, because I think a lot of times in the spaces we keep reverting back. We need to do stuff back what we did 40 in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s. We're not there yet. We're not there at all. And we've surpassed as far as with money. Like you said, I believe Canadian born, it was you, that we're it's more Black millionaires now. We own more homes now. We have more, the careers. We're in a whole nother different space
Right.
than we are, our grandparents and grandparents. We can't go back there because we've evolved into something completely different. But we can't fix this if we keep looking back at them and wanting to be something that we cannot go back.
We got to be careful, Court.
What do you mean?
Because
explain it.
All right, so there's this thing called reverse benign neglect that I developed. Right?
you created this.
Yeah, because I'm a ghetto sociologist. You know what I'm saying? I'm always examining our people to figure out what's going on.
He's a nerd like us.
Listen, but benign neglect was a policy that was developed by this country that basically says ignore Black people, ignore their problems. Reverse benign neglect is another way of ignoring Black people, but it's more strategic. You ignore their problems by telling them that they're doing well. Look at all the billionaires you have. Look at all of this. Is reverse benign neglect. So when you start talking about millionaires and things like that, like Kevin Samuels be throwing out these stats, like you have 2.5 million Black men in the upper class. 52% of Black men are single and childless. Half of Black men are in the middle class. And then you go and examine where those stats come from. I'm like, oh, this is reverse benign neglect, because that report that those stats are based on, it's an examination of 909 men who were born between the years of 1957 and 1964, the baby boomer generation. So you're making assessments about an entire Black male population based upon how 909 Black men are doing that were born before the year 1964. So to me, that's reverse benign neglect, because that's not a representative sample of Black men. So you're saying, oh, we're doing well. Black men are like, no, we really are not. So we have to be careful when we're putting out these stats about how we are doing, because I think that sometimes it hides the fact that we are suffering more so than we were back in our grandparents' age.
Let me get that. I hear you also, Unc and Bishop. So it is a fact that we are doing financially better than we were 30, 40, 50 years ago. So we are. So when I say,
as a percentage of, like, how do you measure that? Like, are you measuring that as like as a percentage of GDP? Like, how are we? What is the variable that we're using
to say that we're doing, like, Black people are doing finance, that we're
more
homeowners, that we have more real estate now, that our careers are more.
I think that, so here's the thing: we don't have a lot of homeowners. We have a lot more access to debt. Right. Dr. Jared Ball has a great book called The Myth of Black Buying Power, where he goes into all of this, the spin that they've given us in terms of wealth. I'll give you a great example. 1920, if you look at the acreage of farmland, that's a measure of wealth that Black people owned in this country. I forget how many millions of acres we owned in 1920. And 2020, we own less than, like, I don't even know what the number is. It was so small. So I think that those are more like accurate representations. So I just think that we just have to be really, really careful when we talk about how well we are doing, because a lot of it plays into this delusion and false pretense that we're moving.
I think more opportunities. I think we have more opportunities, but it's not translating into what you're saying it should. We have the opportunities, more opportunities than what our grandparents had, but we're not using the opportunities to acquire those things that we can build on. We got jobs and we got material, but we're not. We have way more opportunities. And it go back to what I was trying to tell Uncle Stu. The problem that we have is our educated class do not get along. We have 3 black communities, and you can see it play out. You have the elite blacks, you have the so-called white collar and educated blacks on that lower tier, and then you have the blacks in the communities that we come from, and they all separated from each other. They don't work together in tandem. So when we look at Philadelphia, where I come from, we got 530 homicides, right? It's like 900,000 black people here, but you can clearly see the distinction between black people. But on an educated level, that group don't get along either at all. They cutthroat. They listen. Black people on a whole do not get along, man, and that's our greatest issue today.
You know why? You know why?
Look at this.
You know what? Because we are individuals competing for limited resources. We don't see ourselves. We don't see ourselves as being on a team or being the same people. We see you as that nigga over there. And like, if you are getting a bag, we have this zero-sum game mentality. So if you get in the bag, that means I'm not getting the bag. It's the same thing in corporate America. If it's one black person there, it's like, oh, it's cool, I'm the black person. But if another black person comes, it's like, oh, we gotta keep our distance. You understand what I'm saying? So hold on. Let me say.
I'm gonna be listening in the back. I got to go feed the wife.
That's how you stay married.
That's how you stay married.
I do have somebody I got to answer to, and if she's mad, let me help you out, bro. If she get mad, right, Bishop, she gonna call that other chick, that